It's an honor for me to be here today. As you said, there's a program that's going on as we sit here and get ready to hear what some of the distinguished panel had to say. Jonathan, Della, Ira, and Chris. I'm anxious to hear their comments, but what's happening up at Yankee Stadium right now is a press release from the New York Yankees. And prior to tonight's 7:05 p.m. game versus the Cleveland Indians at Yankee Stadium, the New York Yankees will honor the 60th anniversary of Jackie Robinson's April 15, 1947 Major League debut, which broke baseball's color barrier. In a special pregame ceremony, the Yankees will dedicate a memorial in Monument Park to Robinson and his number 42, the text of which reads, "In becoming the first Major League player to break the color barrier, Jackie will forever be an inspiration with his grace, dignity, and perseverance. His history and the stories of those who never had the same opportunity must never be forgotten." In addition to the new permanent fixture in the stadium, the Yankees are donating $1 million to the Jackie Robinson Foundation, which provides college scholarships and leadership development training to talented minority students. I thank you, and let's get on with the program. Thank you.
That seems like a very nice way to begin our evening. And it seems, we were talking a little bit before the program began tonight, that it seems like the 60th anniversary of Robinson's debut in many ways has received more attention than the 50th anniversary. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that there seems to be, first of all, a new generation of players in the league. The idea of everyone wearing the number 42 came from the players, came from Ken Griffey Jr., and just sort of grew organically. I think there's more of a realization now, 60 years later, than there was 10 years ago of the importance that he had, not just in breaking the color barrier of integrating baseball, but in making an impact on the civil rights movement. I think people understand today that this was the beginning, that 60 years ago when the war ended, there was an opportunity that America sensed to make this a new and better democracy, that we'd fought for something in Europe and we had a chance to fight for something here. And at that same moment that this was being recognized for the first time, Jackie Robinson came along as the embodiment of that promise. At the same time, I think, as we explore, as we celebrate Robinson, and one of the reasons that really compelled me to write this book was the chance to strip away the myths and look at what really happened in 1947. And that's what we're here to do tonight as well. And I think we have a great panel and a great opportunity to explore that tonight. And I also look forward to your contributions and questions. In 1947, when Robinson came along, this was a very segregated country. New York City was a very segregated place. And there were very few institutions that had made any attempt at integration. Baseball was the game that people were clinging to. After the war, Americans were confused about what direction the country was going to go in. We were just learning about the horrors of the Holocaust in 1946 and 1947. We were just beginning to realize the menace of Russia. And people turned to baseball in a way that they never had before. It offered them a sense of comfort. And in 1946, you saw record-breaking crowds turning out at the ballpark. And in 1947, and that was in part because all these famous ball players were back after fighting in the war, DiMaggio and Williams. In 1947, Jackie Robinson comes and throws a wild card into the whole thing. And suddenly this game that offered a sense of comfort is as chaotic and as confusing as anything else. And it's potentially showing America a new way, but it's also potentially devastating one of the few things that we thought we could turn to for a sense of normalcy. Jackie Robinson is alone when this goes on. He's one of 400 major leaguers. He's the only African American, the only Negro, as they called it back then, or as some other words that some of the ball players on his own team called it were a lot cruder than that. And I want to explore tonight all of these things as best we can in our limited time. What was America like in 47? What was New York like? What were the Dodgers like? And what was Jackie Robinson's life like? These are the issues that excited me about doing this book, to get beyond the myths, to take Jackie Robinson off of this sort of Mount Rushmore that we've put him on and make him real again. And I hope that we can explore some of that tonight, and I'm looking forward to beginning. We'll go around the horn here. We'll start at first base for Chris. Now, Chris, you not only wrote a play about the Negro Leagues, you wrote a great book about African Americans in World War II. I wonder if you could give us a sense for what was happening at the end of the war, when black soldiers were coming back from the war. You've just seen blacks migrating from south to north. Give us a sense of where civil rights, where integration stood on the country's agenda at that time.
Okay, Jonathan, I'm going to go quickly through 200 years to get to really understand why Jackie belongs on Mount Rushmore. Because if there's a face that can be put on the turning point in American history, it's Jackie Robinson's face. So we all know about the great history of our nation. We're a cradle of freedom, but we were also hit with a tsunami called slavery and racism. In the lobby of the exhibition here, I don't know if you folks get a chance to see it, but there's a character called Jim Crow. And people usually associate him with the American South, with discrimination, but the character started right here in New York. And from that point in the Civil War, when the Jim Crow era begins, from, let's say, 1865 up to 1947, there's really just a steady erosion of rights of the African Americans. Discrimination is legal in housing and employment, education, and it's getting worse in the country. But by the time of World War II, we had 1.1 million African American soldiers who were fighting not only against the Nazis abroad, but the Nazi wannabes here at home. We had, the culture was steeped in discrimination. It was all legal. So during the war, many of the guys got an opportunity to feel that when they returned, that maybe things were different in the U.S. But unfortunately, in almost all the cases, when they got off that boat in New York, some had been able to find friendships among white soldiers. But when they got off the ships in New York in 1945, they were again segregated, going from one place to another. In a real sense, just that act of Branch Rickey and the Dodgers with Jackie Robinson set the nation really on a new course. It was a test. When you talk about breaking the color barrier, that's an interesting phrase, because who uses phrases like that? They were avoiding two words, integration and segregation. So that's sort of the stage for 47.
That's a very nice overview of a lot of material. Let's take the telescope in a little bit and focus, instead of on the nation, on Brooklyn. And Ira, you were a Dodger fan in 1947. You were living in Brooklyn. What was the sense of, was there any sense in Brooklyn of integration even as an issue before Jackie Robinson came on the radar screen in your neighborhood?
Well, it wasn't even the use of that word. Nobody used that word. I grew up in East Flatbush in a predominantly liberal Jewish, not predominantly, completely liberal Jewish. It's not only did I never see blacks, I never saw Christians, and this was a liberal Jewish community. You know, people don't think of it as Mississippi, but my parents worshipped Roosevelt. You know, all of that. And we read newspapers like the PM, for those of you who remember. But I never saw a black child. I went to 3 different public schools until high school from 1943 to 1955, and I never saw a black child. If I went shopping with my mother anywhere, I never saw anybody black. Not as customers, not as salespeople. If I went with my parents to vote, to participate in that ceremony, you never saw anybody black online in my neighborhood, and I never saw a black elected official. And if I went to the movies, I never saw